So how do you even begin to measure something that has no end? It's a question that kind of breaks our brains because we're so used to limits. Today, we're diving into one of the most profound concepts you can imagine, the boundless, infinite love of God and how it was actually made real, tangible, through the humility of Christ. Let's start to unpack this incredible idea.
Our journey really begins with this incredible metaphor, a rill. That's just a tiny little stream of water, something you could easily step right over. Now picture the boundless ocean. What this is telling us is that all the human love we've ever known, from every person through all of time, it's just that tiny stream. That's a scale that's almost impossible for our minds to fully get a hold of.
I mean, just think about what that really means. The source material says all the paternal love which has come down from generation to generation, all the springs of tenderness which have opened in the souls of men are just that small. Now, this isn't to make our love seem insignificant, not at all. It's to help us understand that divine love, well, it's operating on a completely different level.
And we're not just talking about a lot of love. It's actually defined by dimensions, length, breadth, depth, and height that are way beyond our ability to measure. As the source material puts it, even if you studied it for ages and ages, yet there is an infinity beyond. It's this ever-expanding reality where there's always more to discover.
That's a huge concept, isn't it? An endless ocean of love. It can feel pretty abstract. So the natural question is, how do we make any sense of it? If it's this endless ocean, where do we even dip our toes in? Well, thankfully, we're pointed toward a very concrete, living example. And that brings us right here to the humility of Christ. This is where infinite love took on a form that we could see, that we could touch, and that we could actually learn from. This is our way in, our entry point to understanding something that seems incomprehensible.
Okay, let's look at the specifics right from the biblical text. Philippians chapter 2, verse 7 tells us that Jesus came in the likeness of men, choosing to be a servant. But then Romans chapter 8, verse 3 adds this really crucial layer. It says he came in the likeness of sinful flesh. And that distinction is everything. He didn't just look human. He fully stepped into the human condition, our state of being separated from God, so he could connect with us and overcome that separation from the inside out.
Now, just seeing this example isn't the end of the story. In fact, it's the very beginning of a lesson. So let's move on and see how this becomes a lifelong learning process for us.
A really powerful way to think about this process is the idea of enrolling in the school of Christ. This isn't a physical place, of course. It's really a way of describing a lifelong commitment to being trained in his character, specifically in these virtues of meekness and lowliness of mind.
So what does it actually mean to enroll in this school? Well, it kind of breaks down into 3 steps. First, you have to consciously enroll. You decide, yes, I want this training. Second, and this is the hard part, you have to start unlearning all those puffed-up opinions and reject the urge for self-exaltation. And third, you have to embrace that this is a continuous journey. You never really graduate. You just get deeper and deeper into the curriculum of humility.
Now, this might all sound like a very personal, internal kind of thing, but it has some incredibly practical, real-world consequences. And that brings us to our next section, how humility becomes this powerful, practical tool for unity.
Just think about it for a second. In your church, your job, even in your own family, what are the usual things that cause friction and division? It turns out that underneath a lot of those different challenges, you often find the exact same root cause.
And here it is, spelled out for us directly in Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Selfish ambition or conceit. It's that drive to put ourselves first, to think our opinions are better than everyone else's, to just win the argument. This right here is the seed that disunity grows from.
And this is exactly why humility is the direct antidote. It's not just a nice thought, it's the only thing that really works against selfish ambition. The same verse, Philippians 2:3, goes on to tell us to act not from selfish motives, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem others better than themselves. When that becomes your starting point, you start to build a foundation for real, genuine unity.
So we've seen this infinite love made tangible in Christ's humility, and we've seen how that humility can literally heal our relationships. Now let's bring it all full circle, right back to that mind-bending idea of infinity.
This quote just drives the point home perfectly, doesn't it? This isn't a subject you master or a book you finish. The study of God's love and Christ's work of redemption, of buying us back from that state of separation, that is the theme of eternity. But that's not supposed to be discouraging. It's an invitation to an endless adventure of discovery. And here is a profoundly encouraging thought. The progress we make in the school of Christ, right here, right now, is never, ever wasted. That meekness, that humility, that growing understanding of love, we don't leave it behind when we die. We actually take it with us. Our spiritual growth has eternal value. So we're going to end with this final thought. If the study is infinite and the classroom is life itself, then the goal isn't to reach the end. It's just to take the next step. So the question for each of us is this: what's one practical thing you can do today to better comprehend and maybe even live out this incredible love and humility?